welcome to a special edition of The Pod, the Dolphinz Esports Club podcast, hosted by myself, introducing. This week we have a special fishbowl themed edition. I have with me, Tim, also known as Hobo, or Father Tim as his current Discord tag.
Hello, hello.
And with me as well, I have the color caster from last week's fishbowl action, RandomMinionCaster. How are you doing?
Hello, everyone.
So, pretty much last week we had the first round of games, which was, I think, pretty exciting. I think we had some good close games. Half the matches were streamed. So just run through those results real quick. And so, excuse me a second to get knock it up anyways. So for our match results on the A side of the bracket, which is the streamed matches from last week, we had Team Solo Manatee taking the series against the League of Dolphinz UGL or Upsurge Gold League roster. Team Solo Manatee again beating POD, our former Blue Otter League roster. And then in our last streamed match, we had the League of Dolphinz Upsurge roster take another victory against POD, the BOL roster. And then on the B side of the bracket, we had POD, the BOL roster, take down I believe it's the Secret Population of Extraordinary Dolphinz, which is our EVO roster, or SPED. And then SPED dropped games to Upsurge and Team Solo Manatee in that same side of the bracket as well. So current standings are, we're looking at a 3-0 Team Solo Manatee, looking at a 2-1 UGL roster, 1-2 SPED, and Pot of Dolphins sitting in last at 0-3. So I want to talk briefly about the importance of seeding for the knockout bracket, because the knockout bracket does give double elimination to your top 2 seeds. How important is this to you guys when it comes to the actual part of the tournament where it gets into the best of series?
So when we get into the best of instead of the just the one and dones, that's where you start to see more of draft means less, because it's not like you make a mistake and then one game is just one and done kind of thing, and it's just like, all right, well, we either just lost because of this big issue or we just won because of this. It's like you actually had time to recover and reflect, but at the same time, you still have a general style of how you want to play the game. So it's not like one loss obviously is bad because you lose 2 and you're done, but at the same time it's recoverable, so you can make these mistakes and get away with it still. And it's like testing the waters pretty much.
Yeah, and specifically for double elimination, and how double elimination helps you find the best team in any given format. What are your thoughts on that, RandomMinionCaster?
Yeah, so I think it definitely benefits all the teams a lot too, because as Father Tim mentioned, if you mess up one time, it's not game over, right? You still have a chance for coming back in. And I like the way your format's set up as well, because you do reward the higher seeds for their positioning as well and their performance in the round robin. So the first seed gets a bye if they can win their first match, right? And they go all the way up to the grand finals in a way. So I really like the way it's set up, and it also gives the losing teams more practice time as well. So even if you lost initially against a particular team, maybe by the time you face them further down the bracket, you've got a bit more experience in your pocket, and you can pull out a win there.
Yeah, and that's one thing. I know the tournament is obviously Worlds themed because this is going on at the same time as the current World Championship for League of Legends. And one of the things that I like, and I'm glad that they introduced in the LEC and LCS, is the double elimination. I think it's kind of
yeah, it's a really nice format.
Yeah, I think it's we kind of are missing out on that with the current World Championship. I don't like how you just hit a best of series that is dictated by multiple groups that might be balanced or might not be balanced. And the foremost example, I think, it's someone is going to get a 1 seed and then have to play think it's JDG or Damwon, depending on who gets the second seed out of that group, which just doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
So at least here, I mean, obviously with 4 teams, you kind of have to have everyone making playoffs. But I tried to reward the winners, but still give the losers like a reasonable chance to improve and do stuff.
Yeah.
So that ties in nicely to our team by team discussion, because currently sitting undefeated and with that top spot, we have Team Solo Manatee. And they are the high gold, low plat average roster, so on paper, I think they pretty much enter as the favorites.
Yeah, I would agree.
I obviously this is a roster that I manage, so I have some insights, but I would like to know from like a third-party perspective, what did you think of them and how they played the game, MinionCaster, since you saw them for 2 games, or at least 1 game, I believe.
Yeah, I watched them play against Pod of Dolphins. I mean, they are clearly stronger mechanically, unfortunately. So they aren't really punished too much for when they make macro mistakes. That being said, they did look a little less coordinated, actually, I thought, than Sped or the League of Dolphins, because they felt like they were just pressuring through their lanes, playing off the individual strength of their lanes a little bit more than they should have. That being said, I think just given how strong they are mechanically, they can just smash their way through most of the fishbowl that way.
Yeah, and what was nice was it wasn't streamed, but I was able to spectate the rescheduled match that was played at 11 o'clock between the Upsurge roster and TSM. And the Upsurge roster actually had a gold lead and a kill lead and a tempo advantage for probably the first half of the game. But again, the problem that I saw individually, because we'll get into that later, but the UGL roster has very good laners.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it was one small macro mistake, and they were just able and ready to punish. I think you said, like, with the individual mechanical play.
Yeah.
Kind of springboarded them back in the lead, and once they have a lead, it looks like it's just going to be up to them to throw. So I think they definitely remain the favorites. I think it'll be interesting to see if they drop a game and to who, especially going into the knockout bracket, because for the sake of parity, I would like for there to be for them to be more challenged, but it was nice to at least see the Upsurge roster take like half of a game against them. Which kind of brings us down to our second place team, which is the League of Dolphins roster for Upsurge's Gold League, sitting at 2-1. I think their victories against Sped and against POD were pretty convincing. But Tim, this is actually a roster that you manage, so what are your thoughts on them and like their strength as a team?
I think they're really good at being unpredictable, right? Like, we know Sybil's champ pool is quite random, and that kind of reflects the whole team because he kind of feels like the leader of that team. And they don't necessarily, like, they don't play your average style, you know, like, they may do, like, you can generalize it to, like, a front to back, like, way that they play the game, but throughout the early and mid game, the way that they play is just so, it's so random. Like, it's almost like the things that they do are kind of like spur of the moment, but they just make the right decisions. It's very weird to me at how good they really are.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think, like, when I saw them play against Pod, like, they felt like they were good in lane, and they were coordinated. Like, when there's an objective to take, they would move together. But it would feel like their setup was kind of lacking. Like, they don't set up properly for when they want to make a play. They just kind of go for it, right? And like I said, it tends to work out. And usually, they are making the right play. Like, if it's a Dragon's up, they make the play for Dragon. Maybe they go for the gank first, and they go like a 4-man dive in the bot lane. Like, I like what they're doing. It just sometimes I feel like it falls a bit short because they don't have the proper setup for it.
Yeah, and that's interesting too, because I think that they're sitting at second place in the bracket, and that's kind of where I think you could expect them to be. But I do agree. I think it's that volatility that allows them to pick up some wins that they might not otherwise get, and I think it's that volatility that also could cause them to drop games that they might be supposed to win. And I know that communication is a thing that has been heavily discussed with that roster. So I am curious to see what kind of form they show up in Thursday because I'm not gonna. Scrim's going well. Can't wait for Worlds, I think is the meme, but I know scrims have been going well, so we'll see.
Yeah. I just think that like, they play on impulse, and that like unpredictability that brings that is their biggest like attraction to that team.
It's kind of like the
reason why
it's
they're
kind of
so
like the
good.
Vietnamese teams that show up with just like weird strategies, and everybody's like, "Why is Nocturne level 6 at 4 minutes?" And then
Yeah.
the game's just over, and you're like, "Okay, well, I guess that made sense."
Yeah, but that means that they might share the same
Yeah.
vulnerabilities, which is when those plays don't quite work out and Nocturne doesn't hit 6 in 4 minutes. Well, they tend to go kaboom at 20. So
But the thing that they also have going for them is like not only do they have that weird style where they just do random things, but it's also they play like LPL where they just fight all the time. They just kind of just run around. At least from the scrims that I've seen,
I
they
feel
just
like
run around fighting.
I feel like Sybil and Islamic Samurai and Sultan on the top side of the map are just so willing to just skirmish over like
Yeah.
anything.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's been nice to see that progression as well, because Sybil and Islamic are both very good laners for being in the gold elo. So being able to use some of that lane control and then turn that into tempo plays with the jungler. As far as the what do they need to do to actually have a chance at upsetting Team Solo Manatee and possibly grabbing that first seed?
I think what they need to do is they need to play a game where they kind of just catch them off guard early, right? Because Team Solo Manatee seems to me that they play like a really standard fundamental game, and they're just really good at it. And if the Upsurge team is able to get a roster or a draft where they pretty much just get something where they just go for picks, they constantly just take over from early game and carry it over the mid game, they might like their best chance is to close out the game early. I think that's their best chance. Or they go for a full scaling comp kind of thing, because I know Sultan likes to play the Master Yi. I don't think that ever gets played and ever actually works out, but something like that could happen. We know Sybil likes to play Crit Kale, as weird as that is. But he can make that work. Like
Yeah,
I've
I've played with the Crit Kale. If it actually is kind of nasty.
Yeah.
But I tend to agree with you there. What do you think, MinionCaster? Is anything that they do line up with vulnerabilities that TSM might have?
I think based on what I saw of both the teams, I don't think playing it long as this like a sort of scaling composition would necessarily be to their favor, just because I feel like Team Solo Manatee does have really strong players as well, and when you play to the late game, you give them the chance to come back in. I think like Tim mentioned there, they do have sort of early game catch them off guard, and I think you snowball that as fast and as hard as you can, so that you give yourself less chances to make mistakes. Because if you don't set up for objectives early game, it's not as bad, but as you get later and later in the game, when like you're setting up for Baird and you mess that up, it can cost you the game. So I think League of Dolphins might want to just like you said, blindside them with maybe a weird draft or something, and play to the top side. You said that Islamic Samurai and who's the mid laner again? Actual Bird, Sybil, yeah. Sorry, yeah, Sybil and Islamic Samurai are really strong. I think you play to that top side. You pick on Anan a little bit. Anan was looking a little bit shaky last week. Route 16 looks really stable, so I'd say pressure the top lane, try and break Anan down and play through the top side, and try and end it quickly before Route 16 and Razorback can really start coming online and scaling.
Yeah, definitely a matchup to watch. I think that'll be exciting. And the team right below the UGL roster in the bracket is Sped, and that's our Evo roster, which they will be starting their season this Sunday, playing in Evo League. They are a newer roster, just assembled for this league, which is starting pretty soon, and they're a roster of entirely new players to the org. and like players that there's only one of them that I knew beforehand. When it came to recruiting this team, this was pretty much a team of all new people and fresh talent. What did you think from seeing them play? Because I believe you casted their win against POD. Right?
Yes. Yeah, I did. I mean, honestly, they don't actually look. They have pretty good coordination for a new team there. Like Zest Isaac Crab was making plays all around the map, and it felt like his lanes were working really well with him in the early game there. So for a new roster, they're actually really good, and I like the talent I'm seeing. McKinney Bro in that top lane especially, looking really strong as well. Just he can just hold down that top lane and draw pressure to that top side. So I think in terms of like their bare bones, like you've got the makings of a really good team coming out of the secret population of extraordinary Dolphinz roster there. That being said, I do think their macro looked a little bit disjointed. Like when Chadman was out warding, the team wasn't supporting him. Sometimes Zest Isaac Crab going for Scuttle or for Dragons, objectives like that. He's not getting the pressure in lanes that you'd like to see, so he's kind of sneaking it away. So a little bit of communication on the macro, but their team fighting so far looked pretty clean.
Yeah. I feel like a thing that I've seen a lot from them is it's usually just ends up being miscoordination. And it feels like when it's on, it's good, because I feel like Jack is a very stable mid laner, very good at playing things that will facilitate a jungler. And XS likes to make aggressive plays, so having someone facilitative like that on the team definitely helps. Worth noting this week as well, McKinney is on vacation, and he was trying out last week. So we have a different tryout that has been in a couple scrims with him so far. GE Lin. And I think Lin was kind of touted to me as a high micro player that is very good in the laning phase, but not an extremely good communicator, and not the strongest macro player. So I'm curious to see how that will integrate. And I think that could also provide some interesting matchups, because I feel like top lane is a potentially exploitable position in this tournament. Like you said, with even Team Humanity, even their top laner seems like he might be a player that could be punished in these cases. So I'm really curious to see what happens there, if that new player gives them an edge. Have you had a chance to watch this team at all, Tim?
We're talking about the Evo team, right?
Yes.
So I actually had the pleasure of subbing in for their game against Team Humanity.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and I will say, because I had to sub in and we did not, and there was no Zest in the jungle, I did not actually get to see him play ever. I saw how much that actually affected them, though. Like they were thrown off the fact that I had to come play, and not only that, we're playing against players that realistically are, a couple levels ahead of them, because not only has that team on Team Humanity, a few of those players have played on a team before, and one of them, Dogru, has actually been like captain of a team before. They just understand teamwork and just overall just fundamentally are better at the game. But let's not take away from the fact that like the Sped roster, the Evo team, actually like they had really good communication, which is very, very like rare to see, right? With a new team, especially a team of pretty much new players to competitive, which I'm pretty sure they are. It's the way that they work together makes up for their lack of skill in some areas, and like their mechanic skill. With having good macro and just good overall team coordination, that can easily be recovered. And they like if they click at the right times, they might actually be able to do much more here than what we're expecting. Because in my opinion, I would put them at like 3rd place here, but they could very well take 2nd, or maybe even challenge Team Humanity at 1st.
Yeah, I think it is, like you said, I think it is the coordination and the teamwork that gives them the chance to kind of punch above their weight. So we're very curious to see if they're actually able to capitalize on that. And I think I think their best case scenario this week, just because they are 2 games out of first, is probably the 2nd seed. What do you think the chances are that they are able to take down? I presume they'd have to beat the at least the Upsurge roster and beat Pod again to bring the record to 3-2, pending a game against Team Solo Manatee. What do you guys think their chances are of doing that?
I mean, I don't like. I think if they kept McKinney, bro, they'd have a really solid. Like they'd have a chance at beating the Evo team. Not the Evo team. Sorry, the Upsurge team. Because I mean, they already. I feel like they've got a lot of strength, and they might just be able to outplay. But if you switch out a new top laner, I don't know if they've necessarily got the coordination to do that. Because it already feels like their macro is a little bit weak, and even against Pod, I actually feel. I know we're going to talk about Pod later, but I actually felt like Pod was playing way below their normal level. So I feel like if they show up this coming week, then they were already going to threaten the Evo team a little bit. If you change out the top laner, I think there's an even higher chance now that they might drop a game to Pod.
Yeah, so with that said, Pod is actually the last team for us to talk about. And they're currently sitting at 0-3. And I do appreciate everyone coming back to play in the Fishbowl, even though they were eliminated from Blue Otter League. And I will say this is this original roster. Tim can attest to this. Was one of the more difficult ones that we had to work through as far as like roster issues and people dropping, people coming, people going. So this group, even though they didn't have a lot of time together, did actually stabilize the roster and play probably the last 4 weeks of the season. Now, a few things worth noting. The team actually has, I believe they're starting 3 mid laners on the top side of the map. Internal Balance, Kali, and Talia are all mid lane mains, playing top, jungle, and mid respectively.
Yep.
Which is kind of funny to me. But
I mean, like. Tally did really well actually in the top lane. Like I think right now with the way the meta is, you can kind of get away with a mid laner in the top lane. Kali, I thought Kali played jungle in week 1 or week 2. Like I cast Blue Otter League Gold as well, and I thought I saw Kali in the jungle.
Yeah. So the week that we were on stream, I think he was. He might have actually been playing jungle at that point. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, he might have.
Yeah, I think that's where I remember seeing him, so I didn't know he was actually a mid lane.
Yeah, he came to the team originally as a mid laner, and he actually played a week at one of the weeks that we won. He was actually playing ADC. I think that was week 2.
Yeah, I believe so.
Kali wears a lot of hats. I think when you play 1,400 games of ranked in a season, you get practiced at a lot of different things, which probably helps some versatility there. But I feel like Pod's biggest strength is like the mechanical ceiling.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like even if they're not like if they're not super coordinated, like even the bot lane, I think Lynx obviously. I mean, he's not like an oppressive laner at all, but he at least has like very good CS numbers for where he's ranked in like the high silver elo. And Sonic is known as most of the gold leagues he's been in, he's been known as a like top player at whatever position he plays. So I'm really curious because they started at 0-3, but like, what do you think they need to do to put it all together and actually get some wins on the board and climb out of that last spot this week?
I think number 1, stop Internal Balance playing Shen mid. Like that did not work. I think that's like the number 1 thing they need to stop doing.
What do you think, Tim?
I think Internal Balance. I do like his Shen, not mid. I think he should play Shen top. I know when I believe it was the Upsurge team scrimmed against them. He kind of followed. I believe it was Panda to whatever lane Panda was playing in, and I think that's fine. I like how versatile like their 3 players are, like Kali, Internal Balance, and Tally. I think that if they get Internal Balance on Shen in the top lane, Kali, I love his Lee Sin. I think he is like a mechanical beast on Lee Sin. And if we get Tally on like any mid laner that is his comfort pick, preferably Talia, as his name would show. I think they can make something happen just purely because of how insane they are mechanically. I think they might be the best team, mechanically speaking, in this tournament, but they don't make good decisions if they try to play through a macro perspective.
They feel the most to me like an LPL team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you're playing Shen mid, like you're kind of an LPL team.
Yeah.
I kind of think they're not identifying their win con either. Like it felt like they didn't really understand who their win con was, and I felt like Keith Lee and Sonic Abs kind of got a really short end of the stick in all 3 matches they played, because like Sonic Abs was playing support and he wants to play aggressive supports like Nautilus, like Leona, and when you're behind on those supports, like there's just nothing you can do. And every time he tried to go in, it just looked like he was feeding at that point because they were so far behind. But I think you get Sonic Abs ahead, you get Keith Lee ahead, because they were doing pretty good in lane in isolation. It was just the enemy junglers kept popping down bot. Focus them a little bit, get them ahead, and then play through your bot lane, because I think that's your ADC, right? And your aggressive engage from Sonic Abs. If you want to play the Shen, I don't care which lane you play it in, but at least you can just stand united to the bot lane instead of, just seeing internal balance just get constantly collapsed on, and nobody can reinforce him because his bot lane's behind, and you can't stand united with yourself.
Yeah, and that was the one other thing I had in my notes is protect the links, because that was actually how they won their last series in BOL. It was pretty much just running protect the ADC comps, which is an interesting change of pace from what we kind of expect from them, but it did work. So I feel like they have to pick a style. I feel like they can't draft the Jinx bot lane and just be like and play passive down there if they are planning on like going aggressive on the rest of the map, because like we said, when things could kind of start going sideways, you don't have like a strong bot lane to play through because you're waiting for them to come online. So they need to either double down on protect the ADC, or maybe put the bot lane on something more utility focused like a Senna, so you can play the rest of the map more effectively.
Yeah, I agree. I think they just need to. I think their win con is their bot lane, and they just need to fully just play around that. Just put someone on Shen, preferably internal balance again. And if Tally's playing Talia, they can constantly make plays happen bot.
Because he plays a very mechanically sound Shen. That's what's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So like it is a little weird in the mid lane, but it's also like, I mean, it's kind of like you get like a I don't know if he's a one trick. I don't think he is, but it's like if you give a one trick, they're one trick in like most roles, they can probably kind of make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I'm not saying that the Shen doesn't work mid. I just don't think it benefits the team best when he has it.
I don't think it does.
Yeah, because the other thing too is like your mid laner should already be able to collapse on bot lane, so you get that extra value by having the Shen playing far side with the global, because he can actually join from anywhere. Whereas
when you get collapsed on all the time as well, right? Like the junglers just pull drive-bys anytime they're crossing from top to bottom. They'll just throw a gank mid. Why not? Doesn't hurt, right? And the problem is, like I said, Shen's ultimate doesn't benefit him. So when he gets hit by a 2v1, Shen, it's harder for Shen to outplay than say like the Talia or a mid laner with an actual ultimate who can look for a kill instead of just having to run away each and every time a gank comes by.
Yeah, absolutely. So this brings us to our prediction segment, because we've already gone about a half hour, so try and keep it short, wrap it up soon. Next week's matches, it's going to be pretty much a reverse of the same brackets, because obviously last week was one best of one, so I just reversed the order, so everyone will get side selection will change, and the streamed matches will change. So we have first side on the streamed bracket, we have Sped versus POD. What are you guys thinking on that one for the opening match? Tim, you can go first.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think that if Sped can build a draft that really reflects on their coordination together, that I think that they win that game fairly easily. But I think Pod just individually could just demolish, because both teams' strong suits are the other team's weakness. So I think if they can really empower their strong suits, if they can empower on their coordination, they can just win that game. purely because they just fight at the right times and fight together.
I can see that. What do you think, RandomMinionCaster?
So this is actually the one game I think Pod actually stands a chance to win, especially with GE Lin coming in for Sped, because this Sped right now would be at their weakest. They've got a new top laner. They're probably not as practiced. Pod's practice a bit more. You've got your strength. You know what you need to do to go into it. So I think this is the one game that they really have a chance to win. So because I kind of like the Pod team, I'm gonna call it a win for Pod here.
Yeah, I will say as well. That was last week was actually McKinney's first series with the team, and since he's been on vacation, GE Lin has actually been in the last 3 practices, so they do at least have like a decent amount of reps together.
Okay.
So it's not totally like you're bringing in a random top laner, but it is only like a week worth of practice, so it's not like there's a lot of history there. So that point does still stand on its own. On the not stream side of the bracket, also in the 8 p.m. time slot, we have a rematch of the 1 and 2 teams with LOD Upsurge taking on Team Solo Manatee. And what are you guys thinking here, Tim? You want to lead off again?
I think that Team Solo Manatee wins this. I think that they are just too strong as a whole compared to the Upsurge roster.
Yeah. Now, the one reason that I'm willing to call for a Upsurge upset here is because I feel like the tools that they use to get that early game lead still exist, and I think that they have had a good week of practice, and I think that some of the weaknesses that they've had with coordination might have gotten better, and if that happens, I think they can get that lead again and not lose it this time. I was also informed that they're drafting a little more around Comfort now, which I think will actually help this team tremendously, because I think Comfort plays a massive hand at the gold, plat, elo, even diamond. I think Comfort is still very important. What do you think, MinionCaster?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Comfort matters a lot. Honestly, it's not going to be a super hot take or anything, but I just don't see Team Solo Manatee dropping any of their games unless they're just fooling around. Honestly, because I just think they play better in the late game when their mechanics, especially if they get scaling champions like Cassiopeia or Vigar.
Yeah, I can see that. And Root definitely loves his scalers, and I think that they all have pretty stable laning phases, so it'll be interesting to see. Back onto the stream side of the bracket at the 9 p.m. time slot, we have the Upsurge roster going up against Sped. And what are you thinking here, Tim?
I think the Upsurge team wins this one, and I don't really think that this one is going to be fairly close, because I think that the way that Sped plays, I don't think they're just going to be able to respond properly to the Upsurge team.
Yeah, I feel like Exest tries to utilize his teammates on Sped to make those aggressive plays, and I feel like it's actually going to be... I think the only way that Sped wins this, my own opinion, is if they try and hard play through bot lane, because I do kind of feel like if both teams are playing through the top side, the UGL roster will do it slightly better.
I'm not even sure even bot side that the Sped team has the better bot side either, though. I feel like the Upsurge team's bot lane is really stable.
Yeah, they're very stable, but that's the kind of the thing is I don't know if they've ever really been pushed super hard, because we find Love is in my opinion a very, very good ADC, and he's pretty good at some of the shorter range picks like Kai'Sa that can snowball a lane. So I want to see them try and get him on something that's oppressive and can really take over a game, and then just try to play through him and see if that works, because I feel like last week they tried the top side versus top side and it didn't work. So I think this week is the time when you'd want to switch it up.
For sure.
I think it is UGL favorite though.
No, I'd agree. I mean, I have a slightly different take from Tim in that I do think Upsurge is still going to win this, but I think if Sped want to win it, more than the bot lane, they need to stifle through the jungle, because Zest showed a lot of map presence early. He was all over the place, kept up the farm. So I think if he can kind of shut Krell Sultan down and then try and assist the lanes a little bit more, Maybe if he can just stifle that way, I think that will be how I'm thinking Sped comes back into it. But definitely Upsurge is who I think is going to take this one.
And on the other side of the bracket, we have our top seed versus our bottom seed. We have Pod versus Team Solo Manatee. On paper, should be pretty cut and dry, but what do you think, Tim?
I think Team Solo Manatee, and I think it's fairly obvious, and I don't think there's really much thought process behind it. They're just better.
Yeah, the only thing I will say, it's unfortunate that they have not yet shown that late game coordination to match Team Solo Manatee, because it does feel like mechanically they at least could go toe to toe in a lot of positions. But it just, I don't think that the chance of that happening is high enough to really call it for an upset. What do you think, MinionCaster?
No, unfortunately, I love me Pod, but unfortunately, like I already said, I don't think TSM dropped a single game here.
All right, and then on the other side of the bracket, continuing with the TSM theme, we have TSM against against Sped. What do you think, Tim?
TSM versus Sped. I'm gonna go with TSM again. Being as I played in that matchup, I think that they are just, even with their coordination, if they get a good comp that really reflects that, they still, I don't think, win. Because the TSM roster is just better players overall. So it's hard to really compare that against, a low mid gold roster to like a low high gold or a low plat high gold roster. I think like it's just too much of a difference individually.
Understandable. So I think that one is definitely going to be a predictable result. Did you have anything to add, MinionCaster?
Nope, just GG go next.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And then we have the Pod. We have the BOL roster going up against the Upsurge roster in the late match that's the 10 o'clock time slot on the unstreamed side of the bracket. This is another one that I think could be interesting, but I don't know how interesting. What do you think, Tim?
I think that it's gonna be the Upsurge team winning this game. Pod does have the potential to win it because if they play to like camping bot side and their mechanical ability, they can win it because they also don't really play a structured style just like the Upsurge team. So they kind of just like fight all the time from what I saw too. So I think like if they can win those fights, right, then obviously they'll win the game. But that then comes down to like draft and champion versus champion thing. So I think this one could be close, but I'm gonna go with the Upsurge team.
Understandable. So that wraps up the predictions. We'll see what does happen on Thursday, starting at 8 o'clock with Sped versus Pod. And I believe RandomMinionCaster, you'll be covering the action. And we should.
Actually, I'm.
Oh, this is your week off. Okay, so it'll be Raz. It'll be. Good thing I asked. Yeah, so that'll be Razmataz, hopefully filling in at the color casting position, and with him should be Stone Poet, but that is possibly subject to change. But we will, no matter what, we will have a crew. And I believe I'll actually be running production that night, so I might even hop in the booth for some commentary. We shall see. But this has been the second episode of Pod, and a second episode of the Pod, and the first episode of the Fishbowl edition for the Fishbowl that we're running. Hopefully this has been a fun event so far. Hopefully it's something we can continue to do into the future. And seeing as we're in week 2 of 5, there's still a lot left to be played. So thanks for joining me, Tim, and for MinionCaster taking time out of your night. We definitely appreciate the insight as well. And I'd like to thank everyone for listening, and have a good night.